Aotearoa. As Stephen mentioned, my name is Judith and I'm a partner at Parry Lawyers. We are a law firm based here in Christchurch. It's an honour to be part of this conference and part of this sector. My interest in this space started as one of my first governance roles was as a trustee of a small charitable trust here in Christchurch that developed 11 social housing units and then was able to house whānau in those. Seeing firsthand the huge impact that having a home had on these people really gave me a passion for this area. So I and others in our firm really feel very passionate about the community housing sector. So today I'm going to talk to you about legal structures. Your eyes might have glazed over a little bit when Stephen was talking about limited partnerships, general partnerships, all those sorts of things. Today I'm not going to go into too much detail. I'm going to try and keep it quite high level, but be assured those things excite lawyers. So if you are getting on the journey of starting to provide community housing, do talk with your lawyers to get the right structure in place. So, which vehicle or which structure? What we're going to do today is Adelaide shortly is going to run you through sort of the life cycle of a project. But one of the first things that a lawyer might get asked is, which entity should I set up to provide some community housing? To start with, we'll ask you about your purpose. What are you trying to achieve and how will you achieve this? Just like you wouldn't pack 10 people into that little smart car to do a road trip across the backcountry of Australia, and you probably wouldn't use the biggest car ever built, longest car ever built to do your chores around Christchurch City. You want to make sure that your vehicle for providing the community housing is appropriate and will achieve your purpose. So some of the questions that we might ask you when you come in and say, we want to provide some community housing. We're going to ask you, what are you going to be doing? Are you going to be acquiring the land? Are you going to be doing the development and then tenanting out the premises? Or are you going to be simply leasing the properties from someone else who has developed them and doing the tenanting? It's really important to know what your role is in the project. What's the size and complexity of the project? Are you building and renting 3 units? Or are you doing like what Corp did and providing 104 homes? How will you pay for the project? So obviously we've talked a lot today about funding and finance, and it's really important to have an understanding right at the start how this project will be paid for, or some ideas of the different options. Funders and financiers will have different requirements in terms of what they want to see about the structure that you have in place and making sure that that is fit for purpose. Who will be involved? Will it just be your organisation involved, or will you be joining forces with other organisations, like we've heard Stephen talk about today? In terms of your particular organisation, who will be involved? It's important for both funders and financiers and yourself, your own organisation, to make sure that both the governance structure and the management structure is well suited to the type of project. If you're wanting to embark on a project that's going to be building 104 homes, and there's no one in your governance structure and no one in your management structure that has any experience in a large-scale project like this, haven't done any construction, haven't provided any community housing before, you probably need to ask some questions, and the funders and financiers will ask some questions as well. It's really important to have the right people in your structures with the right experience. So now I'm just going to give a high-level overview of just a couple of different structures that you might like to use. There are many different structures that can be used, but these will give you some ideas. So the first one is limited partnerships. So this is a corporate structure. It combines some key features from companies and some key features from partnerships. So you have one entity as the general partner, and they manage sort of the day-to-day running of the entity. And then you have your limited partners, who are your investors and almost silent partners there. The positives of a limited partnership: well, liability for those limited partners, those investors, is ring-fenced. It's restricted to their contributed capital. So that's a bit of security for them. The general partner can manage the affairs of the limited partnership, so they've still got quite a bit of control about what goes on there. There's also privacy, the identity of the limited partners and the contents of your partnership agreement. They're not registered anywhere, so for some people and in organisations that's important. The drawbacks: it is more involved to set it up. You do need a written partnership agreement, and obviously the investors or the limited partners, they can sort of negotiate their rights and obligations in this deal. So you do need to be careful that you agree on that before moving in. And there might be other FMCA requirements that you need to meet there as well, which again adds a layer of complexity. General partnerships: this is where two or more partners or organisations join forces. The liability is not ring-fenced, so those entities are jointly liable there. You could have a partnership agreement or a joint venture agreement, and we would always advise that yes, you should have one of those, but it is not a requirement. Again, these are private and aren't registered. And then the last one I want to talk to you about there are charitable trusts, which lots of you will be familiar with. So these are a separate legal entity. If your trust board is incorporated, it will be the entity that contracts. The liability of the trustees is limited if that trust is incorporated, and that's really important if you're getting volunteers onto your board. That will make them feel more comfortable about becoming involved. When a charitable trust is registered, there's quite a lot of detail about the trust available for public searching, so that's something to be aware of. And also, because you're registered, the Attorney General can also inquire into and examine the operation and condition of the charity, so someone can be coming in and looking at that. With a charity, your purposes are restrictive, so you must act to further the purposes that are in your trust deed. And those purposes must be charitable, so advancement of education, religion, relief of poverty, or any other purpose for the benefit of the community that's not in those three. It's important to set those up right at the start, because if you set up your charitable trust deed and you originally wanted to advance education, but now you're going to do community housing, that's not quite fitting. So we need to make sure that that structure is right. Tax exemption: if you are registered with charity services, your charity should be exempt from income tax on some or all of its income. There might be some other tax benefits there as well, and your entity might be eligible for donee organisation status, which allows donors to claim a tax credit when they donate to the charity. There are quite onerous disclosure and reporting requirements for charities, and especially the larger the charity is. But whilst that might seem onerous, being a registered charity does give your entity greater credibility. So that's just a bit of an overview of some structures. As we've heard today, there's obviously a lot of complexity. The larger scale you go, and there could be lots of different structures that might need to be involved in what you end up doing. So you have an idea, you want to provide some more community housing. Where to next? Well, what we would suggest is chatting to your advisors early on. Adelaide's shortly going to give some more advice on all the steps of the project, and she also would encourage you to talk to your advisors early on. Also, I've got there meet up with others in the sector. As Stephen mentioned, he's happy to chat with you about his experience, but we're always pleasantly surprised in this sector how willing organisations who have they're further along on the journey, how willing they are to assist people. And in your welcome packs, you should have received a legal guide that we prepared for this conference. We're always very keen to provide any resources that might be useful to the sector, so please just let us know if there's an area that you would like us to provide a free article on or something like that. I'm just going to leave you with a quote from Maya Angelou that says, "The ache for home lives in all of us, the safe place where we can go as we are and not be questioned." How wonderful if every whānau in Aotearoa could satisfy this ache and have a place to call their home.